It's like sounds good.
You have.
Yes, yes, it's okay.
Okay, good, good. Oh, good.
Well, good evening, and welcome to the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin. My name is J.R. DeShazo, and I'm the proud dean of the LBJ School, an institution dedicated to improving the quality of public service at all levels of government. Thank you for attending tonight's event as part of the 25th Annual Barbara Jordan National Forum. The Barbara Jordan National Forum is a student-led signature initiative of the LBJ School that celebrates the groundbreaking work and legacy of former Congresswoman and distinguished public servant and teacher Barbara Jordan. Barbara Jordan taught at the LBJ School of Public Affairs from 1979 to 1996 as the Lyndon B. Johnson Centennial Chair of Public Policy, a chair that I now have the honor of. It was the final chapter of her long career as a public servant, civil rights leader, educator, and policymaker who worked tirelessly for social justice and integrity in public service. And I have to share with you, as a new dean, as I've gotten to know our alums, Barbara Jordan is the one instructor that everybody mentions with fondness and admiration. And so it's my great honor to finally be able to join in the Barbara Jordan Forum and this week of celebration of her life. Her contributions to history and to the education of future change makers act as a lodestar to the school and its mission. They guide us, they remind us of our roots and of our future. And each year, the Barbara Jordan National Forum honors her memory. I now have the privilege of introducing to you the student co-chairs for the forum, and there are three of them. Brianna McBride is a recently published author and first-year Master's of Public Affairs student from Houston, Texas. Kuro Tawil is a Master's of Global Policy Studies candidate, a Strauss Center Cyber Fellow, a first-generation American, and a native Austinite. Zoe Parker is a first-year dual Master's in Public Affairs and Community and Regional Planning student. Originally from the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, she arrived in Texas 6 years ago via Houston. Please join me in thanking these student leaders for making tonight's event possible and congratulating them for convening this.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dean DeShazer, for those words. Brianna, Kuro, and I are so honored to have been chosen by our peers as this year's Barbara Jordan National Forum co-chairs. This marks the 25th year that student leaders at the LBJ School pay tribute to the life of renowned public servant, congresswoman, teacher, and civic leader Barbara Jordan. The annual forum is both a celebration of Jordan's life and an opportunity to ensure that her legacy lives on. Each year, the forum is framed by a theme drawn from one of Barbara Jordan's famous quotes. When my co-chairs and I set out to begin planning this year's forum in the fall, we knew that we wanted the theme to center our community. As policy students, we are especially familiar with the ideals of civic duty and public service. Barbara Jordan brought these ideals to the national stage in 1976, when she became the first Black woman to deliver the Democratic National Convention keynote address. In her speech, Jordan warned America of the threat of fractured national unity. Public servants, she declared, must set an example, but we all must participate. In the quote that would go on to inspire this year's forum, Jordan proclaimed, "A nation is formed by the willingness of each of us to share in the responsibility for upholding the common good." Jordan's words are as significant today as they were at the convention nearly 50 years ago. The pursuit of this common good that benefits each of us is only possible with all of us is the ideal that grounds this year's forum. In considering the voices we wanted to amplify at this year's event, we returned to the ideal of community. Our search for a phenomenal civic leader and public servant led us just 2 miles down the street to the Houston Tillotson University, where Dr. Colette Pierce Burnette currently serves as the first female president and CEO. Before arriving in Austin in 2015, Dr. Pierce Burnette forged a successful career as an entrepreneur and leader. Since her arrival in Austin, Dr. Pierce Burnette has displayed an unwavering commitment to ensuring student success at her university. To list all of Dr. Burnette's accomplishments would take more time than we have in one evening, so I'll highlight just a few of them. Within the Austin community, she serves as co-chair of the mayor's task force on institutional racism and systemic inequities, and sits on the board of the Austin Community Foundation, the Greater Austin Area Black Chamber of Commerce, and the Austin Area Urban League. Dr. Pierce Burnette has been honored as Administrator of the Year, Diverse Issues in Higher Ed's Top 25 Women in Higher Ed, and most recently, the Chamber of Commerce's Austinite of the Year. Like Barbara Jordan and my co-chair Brianna, Dr. Pierce Burnette is a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. The LBJ School has invited many distinguished guests to highlight the forum. As we mark this 25th year, we start a new tradition of highlighting exceptional civic duty with the Barbara Jordan Public Service Award. We are proud tonight to honor Dr. Burnette as the inaugural recipient of this Hallmark Award. Those students carry out the vision of the forum. Our work is only made possible by the trailblazers that preceded us. One such person is Dr. Ed Doran, a career public servant and a longtime fixture at the LBJ School. Dr. Doran served several years as a political appointee of President Bill Clinton and held senior positions at the Joint Center for Political Studies and the Brookings Institution. He has worked here at the LBJ School for over 2 decades, formerly serving as dean and currently serving as a professor to me and many more students. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ed Doran.
Thanks very much, Zoe, Pierce Burnette, Dean DeShazo, ladies and gentlemen.
welcome. I think you have received in Zoe's comments a pretty compelling explanation for why Dr. Colette Pierce Burnette was selected as the first recipient of this award. I want to mention one other thing, so if I may, you didn't mention, which is that for much of her career, a distinguished career, Dr. Pierce Burnette was also a military spouse. And when I worked at DOD, one of the things I learned was that families serve too. We need, whenever we thank our members, service members for serving, we also need to thank their families. This is the first year this award has been given, but it's the 25th year of the Barbara Jordan Forum. And so a question logically arises, Zoe, what took us so long? And that's one of the wonderful things about working at a university, particularly at the LBJ School. People are constantly inventing things. I just want to spend a couple of minutes, well, less than that, because Zoe is keeping watch on the clock. Less than that, explaining why a previous generation of students developed this, the Barbara Jordan Forum in the first place. It was supposed to understand what happened in the year 1996. That was the year that Barbara Jordan died. It was a huge shock, moment of a long reading period for people connected to the LBJ School, but other things also happened in 1996. That was the year of the Hopwood decision, which in effect eliminated affirmative action programs initially at the law school and eventually at all public universities in Texas. At the LBJ School, of course, we were disappointed at that, but also particularly worried that a program that the Ford Foundation had sponsored that was aimed particularly at recruiting and supporting minority scholars at public affairs schools, that program would be eliminated. And to say the least, the grieving process combined with the disappointments in the policy arena produced a faculty and student body that was in quite a funk. And they finally began to ask, what would Barbara Jordan do? What would she say? What wisdom would she share with us? And what they said is, you know, Barbara would say, you gotta keep fighting the good fight. You gotta continue to be committed to the common good. You've got to be committed to public service. And that became the motivating spirit behind the Barbara Jordan Forum. I want to congratulate the students, because this has always been a student-led enterprise. And I especially want to commend you on creating the Public Service Award and on selecting an extraordinary woman, an extraordinary education leader to receive it, Colette Pierce Burnette. Sorry, Corey. Hey, we always got to be part of the brick and bread.
Wow, that's it's very overwhelming. I'm not gonna cry, embarrass my team. Actually, to start off, recognizing my team. Dr. Maggot, Ms. Jackson, Dr. McDonald are all here with me. I thought Mr. Knox was here this evening. I may be the face of the awards that I've received, but my face is on it, my name is on it, but it's really the people who I work with every single day. I'm super grateful for them because they're the wind beneath the wings. They push me, pull me, drive me crazy, make me happy, bring me joy, all those things. So I have 15 minutes with you, and I have so much to share. But before we get to our theme, you can't give the president the mic and not expect her to spend at least 3 of her 15 minutes talking about our own institution. Huston-Tillotson is the anchor institution of East Austin, the intellectual heartbeat. We are a historically Black university committed to our faith-based roots and dedicated to enhancing the lives of individuals from all walks of life through a high-quality liberal arts education, an institution where we strive to be ideal, which is captured in our core values of integrity, diversity, excellence, accountability, and leadership. Huston-Tillotson has been serving this community for over 145 years. We are the oldest institution of higher learning. Yes, we are older than the University of Texas at Austin. I'm not older than you. First campus offering a high-quality collegiate experience with diverse in race, diverse in ethnicity, diverse in who we love, diverse in country of origin, diverse in socioeconomic status, and diverse in religion and diverse in thought, just to name a few of the prisms of our diversity. Our strength is in our diversity, while also in our sameness. Students at HT are not the Black student or the brown student or the white student. They are the student. I'm honored to bring you greetings from my campus, a sisterhood of 2 institutions, very alike, but in many ways, very different. I'm honored to be here this evening and extremely honored to receive the award, especially because it's from students. And no shade on the 3rd co-chair, but 2 of my sorors, that makes it even more special. So I'm honored to be here to talk about the theme for the evening, which is the common good. It's taken from the 1976 Democratic National Convention, a keynote address of Barbara Charlene Jordan, as we heard before. Barbara Jordan, born in Houston, Texas, a graduate of the Historically Black College, Texas Southern University in Houston, a lawyer, an educator, a congresswoman, an orator, a daughter, a sister, a musician, an author, and a constitutional scholar, etc., etc., etc. A legend, an iconic figure in our nation's history. In 1972, at the age of 36 years old, Barbara Charlene Jordan became the first Black member of Congress elected from Texas. 2 years later, at the age of 38 years old, this freshman representative became a national figure because of her prominent role as a member of the House Judiciary Committee during the impeachment hearings of then President Richard Nixon. 2 years later, at the age of 40 years old, she became the first African-American and the first woman to deliver the keynote address at that 1976 Democratic National Convention in New York City. She began with these words, and I quote, "It was 100," and I do not have Barbara Jordan's voice. "It was 144 years ago that members of the Democratic Party first met in convention to select a presidential candidate. Since that time, Democrats have continued to convene once every 4 years and draft a party platform and nominate a presidential candidate." Barbara Jordan continued, "And our meeting this week is a continuation of that tradition. But there is something different about tonight," she said. "There is something special about tonight," she said. "What is different and what is special? I, Barbara Jordan, am a keynote speaker. She continued by saying, a lot of years have passed since 1832. And during that time, it would have been most unusual for any political party to ask a Barbara Jordan to deliver a keynote address. But tonight she said, here I am. And I feel that notwithstanding the past, my presence here is one additional bit of evidence that the American dream need not forever be deferred. End of quote. Those words from this woman of firsts, the opening statement of Barbara Jordan, resonate extremely deeply with me. I will tell you why. My research has told me, what we heard from Dr. Doran earlier, that in 1977, students of the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs took a call to action. Originally calling it the Barbara Jordan Memorial Forum on Diversity and Public Policy, an event organized to put a positive light on diversity in the immediate aftermath of the Hopwood decision, as we heard earlier. It was a way to celebrate the extraordinary life of Barbara Jordan. Student organizers hold the forum each year in February. Barbara Jordan's birth month and the month the nation celebrates Black history. All of the 28 days we get, that's another topic for another day. But on this day, the 25th year of celebrating her life, her day, and her life and her legacy of former Congresswoman, distinguished public servant and teacher, this is a continuation of a tradition. Just as Barbara Jordan said in 1976, for me, there is something different about tonight. There is something special about tonight. What is different and what is special? For me, it is because I am standing for you deeply humbled and honored as a keynote speaker. By no means a Barbara Jordan. However, I am a little Black girl from Cleveland, Ohio, with none of the predictors in my own life that I would have ever been blessed to serve as the first female president of the combined institution Houston-Tillotson University, the first recipient of this award. No indicators in my life would think that I would be at an institution, despite being Austin, Texas's oldest institution of higher learning, and often, like the students we serve, over the years having been disrespected and overlooked, but now a proud president of that magnificent institution. But tonight, here I am, something special for me. And I feel just like Barbara Jordan felt in 1976. Notwithstanding the past, my presence here is one additional bit of evidence that the American dream need not forever be deferred. What Barbara Jordan knew then and what we should all know now is that yes, we as a nation have come a very long way, but we have a very, very, very long way to go. The equity and justice that Barbara Jordan dedicated her life's work to still elude us to this moment. There are no words to describe her life, who she was. She was one of my sheroes. This is a bright spot in my presidency to be honored in her forum. She was larger than life, my sorority sister, my image of a life well lived, a life lived with purpose, a warrior for social justice, a woman who defined the common good. Whenever I'm afforded the opportunity to speak, I always ask God to empty me of me and to fill me with Him, so that I too can learn something. And during my research, I learned quite a bit about Barbara Jordan. A lot about the person that she was. The person who grew up in a city with segregated taxis, restaurants and lunch counters, restrooms, hospital wards, swimming pools, churches, labor unions and schools. The person who grew up in a place where the handful of Black policemen could not arrest whites nor eat in the segregated city cafeteria. The person who grew up in a state where Blacks could not vote in the Democratic primary for most, if not all, of her childhood. She is from roots of excellence, faith, and courage. She was the great-granddaughter of Edward Patton, a Black representative who served in the Texas legislature during Reconstruction. She was the daughter of Benjamin Jordan, a Baptist minister and a warehouseman, and Arlene Patton Jordan, a maid, homemaker, and teacher in the church. She was the baby sister of Benny Jordan Cresswell and Rosemary Jordan McGowan, both music teachers. Her father wanted Barbara to be a music teacher also, but she was defiant. Is that surprising? The person who was a graduate of Phillips Wheatley High School, where she was inspired, much to her father's dislike, to become an attorney after hearing a speech by Edith Spurlock Sampson, an American lawyer and judge, and the first Black US delegate appointed to the United Nations in 1950. She was the person who played the guitar and loved, sorry. She was the person who played the guitar. She loved laughing and she loved love. She was extremely competitive. She was the person who experienced the sweet moments of going to a debate tournament and beating all of the nation's best teams. That had to have been a sweet moment. The person who had not traveled outside of the confines of her neighborhood in Houston until she joined that Texas Southern as the only woman champion debate team. The person whose upbringing and collegiate experience fostered her ability and her ambition. The person who Delta Sigma Theta sorority shares as a member who changed the world. The person who received the prestigious Medal of Freedom. The person who suffered losses, as we all do. She ran for freshman class president and lost. She ran for student body president and lost. Finally, she was elected editor of the yearbook. The person who had pain in her life, as we all do. Her father, who eventually supported her career choices, was beyond proud to see his daughter honored as governor of the state of Texas for a day. He had a massive stroke immediately following the ceremony, dying the following morning. Jordan later remembered the last time she spoke to her father. She wrote, "I walked into the room and there he was with all his teeth showing, just the most wonderful smile imaginable, honoring me as the governor for the day for the state of Texas. And I said to him, Chief, you always made the day, but you got to see me be governor." And he was still grinning. That person was bigger than life, at least for me. She was a part of my wanting the job as president here in Austin. When I arrived for my interview at the Austin Bergstrom Airport and I went to the carousel to pick up my bags, I saw the statue of Barbara Jordan. And I thought I was overwhelmed just to see her statue. And I thought any city with a statue of Barbara Jordan must be badass, must be awesome. In my mind, that statue was 10 feet tall. I was so dismayed the next time I went to the airport to see that it's not 10 feet tall at all. But in my mind, it still looms large. It was all that Barbara Jordan is to me. I'm proud to say that my university, Houston-Tillotson, bestowed an honorary doctorate and a speaker on our campus in 1995, before she died at the age of 59 years old. Speaking at the her memorial service, a friend of hers described her as, her words were, "So why was Barbara Jordan so special, so admired, so loved? Because she spoke to the highest good in us all. She taught us to know our own hearts and minds and to travel the high road. She believed that each of us can actually change the world, and her investment in us gave us the confidence that we really could." The Hastings Women's Law Journal put it best. It said that during her lifetime, Barbara Jordan taught us how to be conscious, integrity, and courage, lessons too rare in today's world, yet lessons we all should follow. Yes, she is a role model. That American dream is no longer deferred from many of us. Every person of color has a story. Every person in this room has a story. Most, if not all of you, are who, where, or you once dreamed you would be. But that does not absolve you from the work. You cannot rest. Change makers and trailblazers like the woman we honor today deserve better from us, because we are who, where, or what we wanted to be because of the Barbara Jordans of the world. So in honor of Barbara Jordan, seeking the common good, I ask you to reflect on your contribution to this fight for social justice and equity. Is attending this beautiful event your allyship, or are you a co-conspirator in this work? Let me ask you to ponder a few things. It is not okay to sit and observe and not be engaged and not looking for venues and ways to lift your voice in your own sphere of influence. What Barbara Jordan committed her life to fight against is still prevalent today. I commend you for attending, hosting, and being at events such as this, for marching in the MLK March, for celebrating Juneteenth. But what do you do when you leave the room when the march is over? We may all be equal under the law, but there is no equity. There is a difference between equality and equity. This is not a new problem, but we have recently been shaken awake. I believe that we were lulled to sleep after the 60s movement, and now we've been shaken awake. So what do we do now that we're awake? Are you resting or laboring for what is right and good? Are you a member or supporter of organizations like the Urban League, NAACP, LULAC? Do you squelch the ideas of young people in civic organizations? Do you criticize the work being done by your church from the pew, or are you a working member? What was your reaction to the Black Lives Matter movement? Are you engaged in your studies here at your school? Are you an encourager or a discourager of young people with a heart beating for change and equity? It's critically important that those of us fortunate to have made it to be intentionally leading as change agents, trailblazers, socially conscious and aware that we are more alike than we are different. None of us are less than. That we must instill in our children a strong work ethic, the importance of their education, and the confidence that they can do anything they want. Barbara Jordan recognized that education is the great equalizer. So what sacrifices are we making now? What are you doing to ensure that once you become diverse, that your diverse employees or your students arrive in the workplace or in the classroom, that their well-being and their growth is enhanced, and that beyond inclusion, you've created a culture of belonging. Even beyond that, what about in your daily life? We're all responsible. As my students say, we need to get and stay woke. We all have excuses for why we can't be involved or engaged or doing this, what I love to call a heart work. We say things like, I'm too busy. It doesn't affect me. It's easy to find an excuse. It's easy to come up with reasons why you can't be engaged. I can't get off work. The meeting is too late and it goes for too long. I can't get out of class. I'll be the only person of color there. I'll be the only white person there. I won't be accepted. I'm not smart enough. I don't really respect what they're doing. No one understands my problems. Nothing is going to change anyway. All they do is talk. Or just after another commission is joined, it's just another task force, another committee, another meeting. My situation is unique. I don't want to hear anything more about race. We had a Black president, what else do you need? We had Barbara Jordan, what else do you need? I'm tired, I don't have the resources I need. The traffic is too bad. My children do well in their school district. I'll just send my child to private school. I'll just send my child to charter school. I don't like crowds, I just don't like people. I must say this again. The problem is not that we don't know how to continue the fight for equity, for a more prosperous nation, or even globe to improve the lives of our children. The problem is we're all tired. We've lost the will. Research has shown us what works, when it works, and where to focus our efforts. But while we're making excuses, the problems and the challenges continue to grow. Through each of our spheres of influence, each of us in this room and watching us through YouTube are responsible for turning this around. What have you done to learn about a culture other than your own? Have you read the book Caste? What do you really know about the time during the pre-Civil War hysteria of the mid-1850s when all Mexicans were expelled from parts of Texas? What do you know about city plans right here in Austin of legally segregating Blacks to certain zip codes with par levels of service? Do you really know what critical race theory is? Do you really know what's happening with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and why it hasn't been passed? Have you read the John Lewis Voting Rights Act? Were you appalled to action by the threats against the Jewish community? Were you outraged by the threats against Black colleges? A threat to one of us is a threat to all of us. So I ask you, how do you really honor the life work of Barbara Jordan? What do you do beyond the forum, beyond Black History or Hispanic Heritage Month, beyond the MLK March? Do you do the month events and then go back home to what a friend or alum of Houston-Tillotson, Joya Hayes, called your couch of contentment until next February? Do you read to a child? Do you volunteer at a church? Do you serve at your church? Do you adamantly support a political campaign? Do you vote? Do you vote down the ballot? Are you an informed voter? We could spend hundreds of hours debating why more than 250,000 voters, 250,000 voters chose not to participate in elections. No vote is a vote. No vote remains as a vote. Are you an informed voter? You can't play from the sidelines. Are you a mentor? Do you read and stay informed? Have you taken a young person to visit the monument in the state capital, South Lawn, highlighting the African-American experience in Texas, from the 1500s to slavery and emancipation to modern achievements in arts and sciences? Have you yourself visited the monument? Are you engaged with the planning of forums such as this, or are you just a sideline attendee or critic? It is just not okay for us to drive home to the suburbs, send our children to the better schools without regard to the plight of others. It's just not happening over there to those people. It's happening to all of us. Are you a servant leader? Do you laugh at or encourage racist jokes, or are you silent? Do you turn a blind eye to institutional racism? Do you snub your nose at systemic racism? Do you question why everybody in a circle looks just like you? Do you think the term equity is overused and underrated? Someone actually said that to me recently. Are you doing your part, or are you stuck in your corner of the world, looking over there, waiting to see what they're going to do, and then naysaying when they do something? Get rid of the excuses. Think of the warriors like Barbara Jordan, defining the common good and committing her life to achieve it. Not only the national sheroes and heroes, such as Barbara Jordan, but support and honor our local warriors as well. You've heard from some of them today, those in this room. My question is, who among us has that same fortitude and resilience that they had and have at times when the battles are much less fierce? My life is not at risk when I seek an education as the great equalizer. Our children can sit where they want in movie theaters. We can work in the same offices as I can work in the same office as my white counterparts without fear. I urge you to find your own form of activism. Barbara Jordan really was an everyday citizen. She was a person. People like Barbara Jordan refuse to live shaking their heads at what is going around them, angry, upset, and not getting engaged. The more shoulders we have on the moral arc of justice, the faster it will bend towards justice. So have will and grit, but I'm not a Barbara Jordan, you say. I'm not an Angela Davis or a Dr. King. I'm not that talented. I'm not that fearless. I don't have that kind of sphere of influence. I don't get opportunities like that to do anything grand. I don't have what it takes. But look at the students who put this together today. Their spheres of influence, their form of activism. All of us have a sphere of influence, and grand is relative. You do what it takes, and you do have what it takes. This is not easy work. It's never easy to labor in a vineyard. You will face barriers in this work. You'll be distracted. You'll feel like it's too daunting, and there will be barriers. Ideas that no one will like, a meeting that no one shows up to, an event that no one comes to, financial barriers, feeling ostracized, feeling threatened, controversy that you aren't prepared for, retaliation, conflict, but you must not let these things impede nor control you. I know that I myself waver and I start making excuses sometimes in this work. And then I come to rooms such as this and I meet young people such as these and I feel inspired. My love tank gets fired up and I'm ready to go. Oh, and I didn't make that up. I come to a close with some words that I extracted from that speech that Barbara Jordan gave on my campus of Houston-Tillotson University the year before she died in 1995. She made a call to action. She challenged those in attendance to create an environment in which people can work, learn, earn, and be productive, all people. She asked people in attendance to be contributors to a civic culture, that common good. She called for citizens who know that the future will be vacuous and empty unless each and every one of its citizens has the opportunity to be the very best that he or she can be. She left the audience with the question that I pose to you today. Are we prepared to make that commitment? Barbara Jordan is looking for a commitment. This very room is the same, this very campus is the same campus she walked. So yeah, as Barbara Jordan said, my presence here, or her presence there, was not an addition, it's just one additional bit of evidence that the American dream need not forever be deferred. Our country faces great danger with division. Will you speak for the common good? There is the age-old question for you to ponder. Ask yourself, what is your role in these unique moments in history as the days come to you, one at a time? Of all the things I can do, what must I do? And why must I do them? And then there is this quote that I love. If the society today allows wrongs to go unchallenged, the impression is created that those wrongs have the approval of the majority. When we sit silent, that's exactly what happens. Barbara Jordan's words remind us that our silence is dangerous. If society allows wrongs to go unchallenged, the impression is created that those wrongs have the approval of the majority. I am encouraged by what I see happening around me in Austin, Texas, a community willing to have the courageous conversations, to make policy decisions with facts and not emotion, wrapped in isms, a community open to investing dollars in what works to change policy and law. Just think, if each of us just had an ounce of the loving heart, fortitude, courage, ambition, and hope that a 40-year-old standing in front of thousands at Madison Square Garden in New York City at that 1976 convention had, just an ounce. We all have a personal fear of influence that reaches far beyond February every year. We are all on this journey together. Students, you are doing very important work here as is shown by this forum. And I'm humbled and honored to be the recipient of this award, the first award. So I'm now a woman of firsts. Stay focused and committed to the common good every day of the year. You're on a mission. It's a calling. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here this evening. This has truly been a bright spot in my presidency. Keep up what the ABL calls the good fight. Thank you.
We're going to let Dr. Pierce Burnette just have a few seconds. I want to thank really everyone who helped to organize this event alongside of our student co-chairs. We have just inaugurated a new Office of Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, really with the leadership of Dean J.R. DeShazo. And really our director, Esteban Delgado, who deserves a huge, huge round of applause. Esteban is a proud LBJ alum and who's doing so much really good heart work in this arena. So I want to thank everyone. And I want to thank Emily Dunkley, Shantae Thompson, who are part of the Center for the Study of Race and Democracy, the office of OSA, and really Tori Yu and our communications and marketing and everybody who's made this week possible. Okay, you know, I've got my questions, but real talk, I'm a huge fan of Dr. Pierce Burnette, and we go back a few years here, and her leadership has been really, really inspiring for me in a number of different ways. And I was, last week, Dr. Pierce Burnette was named the Community Changemaker of the Year by Notley. And that's an award for really the example that she has set. So in addition to being sort of the Austinite of the year and all these different things, I think that what Dr. Pierce Burnette has done in her 7 years here in Austin is really, truly extraordinary. We're a city that has a lot of historic divisions. And you've come here as somebody who's a proud Midwesterner from Ohio, and really made the city your own, but really taught us a lot of lessons. And I think there's a lot of leadership lessons that Dr. Pierce Burnette has taught us. And that's really where I want to start. Because I think in a lot of ways, the leadership that you've shown, partnerships with Tesla, Apple, the Center for Innovation, really making Houston-Tillotson a firm part of our higher education landscape for the first time. Even as you pointed out, still not enough resources devoted there. And you talked about that at Motley. A lot of times we can have huge fundraisers, but even in the context of 2020, not enough attention has been paid to higher education for those of us who are marginalized here in Austin. And the fact that Houston-Tillotson serves such a specific purpose for students who, if not for HT, would never go on a college campus and never have a chance to use equity, use education as a leverage towards greater equity, not just for themselves and their families, but for the community. And that brings us back to Barbara Jordan. And Barbara Jordan, as a proud graduate of Texas Southern, we would have never had Barbara Jordan without historically Black colleges and universities, right? So before she met President Lyndon Johnson, she was at Texas Southern University, right? So that's where education can be a great equalizer. So my first question to you is, because I think this is such a moment for all of us. We've talked about 2020 so often, and in a lot of ways, we're already experiencing a kind of backlash to 2020. 2020 was our great, leveler. After Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, so many people felt, and you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, that Paul, Saul on the road to Damascus. One of the things about, I grew up in Brooklyn, Jamaica, Queens, and having a mother who's an immigrant from Haiti, who's a huge Christian, you end up reading the Bible 3 times before the age of 10, right?
No nonsense, no nonsense.
Yeah, no nonsense. That's the household, which is why I can't do the Don Lemon New Year's thing. I got, my mom is watching. But I want to, when we think about this idea of change, because Saul becomes Paul, and so epiphanies do happen. So many people talked about change in 2020. I want you to tell us what leadership experiences, not since 2020, but since becoming president of HT, that you've drawn in terms of managing both the institution in the times financial crisis, the pandemic and the trauma of the pandemic, but also 2020, because I think in a lot of ways, your voice became even more amplified in the city in 2020. So people were calling upon you, and I understand that. People started to call upon. We started to get basically strange phone calls from people who we didn't even know, who were asking for your expertise. And I think you're such a great exemplar. What are some, and so many of our students are interested in, and I love your phrase, and this gets me back to the Bible, but also Dr. King, servant-oriented leadership. Service-oriented leadership, but also servant-oriented leadership, right? So what are some lessons you're taking away, because you're stepping down from the presidency, and it's your choice. After really 7 abundantly successful years, you placed HT on the map, not just in Austin, but nationally. What are some lessons that you've learned?
First of all, I have tremendous mutual admiration for this brother. Let's give this brother a hand. So, I read that something that really stuck with me, that crises don't make leaders, they reveal the kind of leader that you are. I'm very, very proud of my campus. And I said earlier, and I want to repeat this, these awards may have my name and my face on them, but it's really the people that labor with me every single day, and my family. I have community support of them. So what I have learned is that you have to follow your own moral compass when you make tough decisions. I say that with having made 3 of the most difficult decisions, I've said this often, in my career, not as a president, but in my entire career. And I've been working for 40 years now. And those 3 decisions were, first of all, to postpone commencement. On my campus, commencement is a rite of passage. We graduate families, not just individuals. We are really movers of increasing social mobility, breaking generational wealth. So commencement is a rite of passage. It's not a popular decision, but it was the right thing to do at that time. The other one was when we closed the residence halls and sent the students home early. That was a really tough decision. And the third one was opening my campus up to the Black Lives Matter March. We had just closed campus when the virus was really raging, pre-vaccines. And my heart was telling me, yes, open the campus up for the Black Lives Matter March. But my head was telling me no. So I didn't sleep 2 weeks after that because I thought we were going to be the super spreader. Nothing happened. The march was very successful. It was a movement. So following that moral compass, that's that instinct, that gut, whatever you call it in your walk, to just really be still and take in all the information that you have and make the decision that you feel that your moral compass shows you is the right decision. And as a president of Historically Black College, we operate in crisis mode all the time. And one of my sister presidents said in a meeting that we were in, these kinds of things we've been dealing with for a very, very long time. And if our institutions can survive Jim Crow, they definitely going to survive COVID. So that's been my experience as a leader during this crisis.
No, that's right. That's beautiful. One of my favorite phrases, Mariam Kaba, who's a prisoner abolition activist, has the phrase, hope is a discipline, right? And I think you're such a hopeful leader. When it comes to our young people and our students, so many people, can get cynical, can get tired, right? And it's really unfortunate. Some of this is social media, some of it's the culture. I'm a Gen Xer, so I remember way back when there were busy signals and there were payphones and dial tones. What can we do as leaders, those of us who are in a position to both teach but also be taught by our students,
right,
but to inspire them and to let them see that even in this time of great division, it's also a time of great hope. Even in this time of great challenges, this is a time of also generational opportunity.
Exactly. The second President Bush is who is lauded with coining the term, the bigotry of low expectations. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that you have low expectations for people. And often we have low expectations for young people, particularly young Black children. Mm-hmm. We don't expect them to do well. We don't expect them to excel. So they don't. And that's bigoted, because when you have a high expectation, you have no language of lack. You have this expectation of their greatness. We call our students the genius generation, because I say this often, you try to rap where you have that rhythm of the words simultaneously when you're making it up at that time. That's genius. So it's carving that out of just getting all that stuff off of young people that we continue to pile on them, and recognizing the stress that they're under all the time. If you're 20 years old, you've experienced a lot of stress in your life when it comes to the things that happen to us as a nation and on the globe. Even now, if you think about it, I had freshmen who came back as sophomores who had never been on their college campus. Mm-hmm. I have seniors who graduated and didn't get to have their last senior year. 9/11 has happened in some lifetime. The wars and the tragedies, the shootings, the murder of George Floyd, just the civic unrest. So it's a very stressful time. So you can't then add on, you should not then add on this low expectation. So my students are scholars. They're all scholars. They're all smart. They got to college because they deserve to be there. They earned it. So now we have to create this environment where they are, they know that they belong there. They know, and we learn as much from them as they do from us. So you have to have this, and it takes work sometimes to do that. It can be frustrating, it can be discouraging, but you have to continue to have that will because this is a purpose. And when you lay down at night, you feel the sense of purpose, the sense of fulfillment. And by the time I get to commencement as a college president, I may be exhausted, but that is so fulfilling to me. We just had our homecoming weekend, and I saw many of my graduates that have graduated under my tenure, and they're teachers, social workers, mathematicians, technologists in graduate school, going to pharmacy school. So these are young people, when they came, they were rough around the edges. But education is the great equalizer. And now they are just trailblazers and change makers. So I say the educators in the room, you cannot have this bigotry of low expectation. Do your own self-reflection, your own inner work. And that's why I call it heart work, because we all have isms. We all have things that we stereotype. And you just really have to really move into that and say, why am I feeling this way about this student? Or why is this student not rising to the occasion? And the young people come to school to grow and to experience things. Some of the best years of my life were my undergrad experience.
And where did you go to school?
I went to the Ohio State University undergrad. And actually, I spoke for my alma mater yesterday, virtually, because we still are struggling with, I was the only Black, I graduated in 1980. I was the only Black graduating in engineering, and one of the very few women. And my alma mater had me come back to try and encourage young people to retain them because they have the same challenge. And we live in a nation that created an entire arm of the federal government after 9/11. We did that out of fear, and we did that with will. So if we're really serious about this work, if we can create another arm of the federal government within 5 years, we can do this. I had a conversation with an architect building one of the tallest buildings in Austin. Actually, some people say it's supposed to be in Texas, off near Rainy Street. And he has already built several buildings, and he was asking me about how he can diversify his office, his firm. And he said, I just don't know how to do it. And I said, so you could construct but you don't know how to diversify your office. That tells me you just don't want to do it. And people just don't have the heart and the courage to unfortunately, to really do that work. It takes work. And to be in an institution of higher learning is just such a fruitful thing.
Okay, my final question, and we'll ask some questions from students. This theme of this year's forum is the common good. In terms of higher education, I don't know what your next stop is going to be. You're going to stay in Austin, you're going to be president of another institution. But what do you think the role as we move forward, higher education and the common good, and really even the relationship between a place like the University of Texas and Houston, right? In terms of trying to amplify what we here are calling justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Because I don't think you can have the equity, diversity, inclusion part without justice, right?
So, a couple things in response to that question. Higher education is a part of what's growing the gap as opposed to closing it, because education is becoming a private benefit as opposed to a public good because of affordability. Ask me what's the biggest challenge I see with higher education? It's affordability. At my institution, I have 75% or so Pell eligible students, and when we really peel that onion back and look at their estimated family contribution, it was astounding to me that about 80% of my students comfortably have an estimated family contribution of less than $10,000. We all know that the EFC is inflated in and of itself because they don't want you to go to movies, they don't want you to have anything in your lifestyle when the government calculates that estimated family contribution. So when I look at that, and we have a very affordable tuition, they just can't afford it. The full payers that I have in my institution are my international students. That's a statement about our nation, about the affordability of education, any post-secondary education opportunity. Even here in Texas, pre-COVID, we had the 60 by 30, 60% of Texans to have some kind of post-secondary education by the year 2030. The only way Texas is going to do that is to educate more poor people and more people of color. Well, where do the funds come from for that? So I really, we need to be voicing that and speaking to that. And when we have those kinds of initiatives to be more diverse and more equitable, then, like I said earlier, how do we make that student feel like they belong? Because just because we get our numbers up and we have more students of color or more, more women in a certain program or more men in a certain program, do they really belong? Are we really tackling that? Are we really sincere about it? So when it comes to higher education, we have to address this affordability issue because it's going to be it could be the next student loans could be the next financial crisis. If the government can defer loans for a certain period of time, why can't we forgive them?
That's connected to voting.
Exactly.
I always tell my students, if young people voted at the same rate as those who are Social Security eligible, your loans would be forgiven immediately. So, and that doesn't mean it's your fault. I'm just saying that that's the power of the vote. We're going to do it. Yeah, these are our student questions, which are more intimate in a nice way. What do you think is the driving force in your life and career?
My faith. My faith. People ask me how I've done, how I've kept up my pace here in Austin during this time, because my staff will tell you we go Sunday to Sunday. And one time somebody said, "How was your weekend?" And I was thinking, what weekend? Because you just always go. There is so much work to do, and the goal line is always moving. Sometimes you're playing football, quicksand. So people often ask me, how have you done it? And in reflection, it's not me. I know that for sure. I'm a vessel. I've been used for a purpose. I was brought here to do 3 very specific things. And in my quiet time, I clearly know that my purpose here at Houston-Tillotson has come to a close. It's time for me to pass the baton. You gotta know it's time to, what do they say, hold the phone.
Kenny Rogers, I remember that, know when to hold them, know when to hold them.
And it's very clear to me that my purpose in this role is over. So I have to make myself open for whatever the next chapter is when I turn that page. And I was sharing earlier, I have fear about that because I've never not worked since I was 17 years old. I was always a work study student. Even when my husband and I were stationed in Turkey and I could not work on the economy there, I had a full-time volunteer job. I've always had something to do, somewhere to go with the purpose. So I do have fear about that, but my faith tells me that the right thing will come for me. And a mentor told me, and I say this a lot, always leave the party when you're having fun. And I'm still having some fun at Houston-Tillotson, so I want to leave that party. Y'all can have a lot of fun. In that world.
So who are your role models growing up and what did they teach you?
So Barbara Jordan really is, like when I saw that statue, I really was like, it took my breath away. And I really did think that it was 10 feet tall in my mind. Like I told my sister, there's this huge statue of Barbara Jordan in the airport. And she was like, really? And then the next time I went to the baggage, I was like, that's Miss Jordan. I'm like, it's same thing as me. So Barbara Jordan for sure. When I was growing up, I had a math teacher, Miss Mescudi, my 5th grade math teacher. Now I have to turn the hangers around so I don't repeat outfits. So I have a terrible memory, but I remember Miss Mescudi, 5th grade teacher. And then at Ohio State, Dean Minnie McGee, who was an HBCU, both HBCU graduates, that really created like a cocoon, a brave and a safe space for Black people majoring in engineering at Ohio State. So she made us belong. She created an environment making us belong. And my mother, who I'm also afraid of, and Ruth Pierce, and my grandmother, Ozella Wilson. Those women, these are women in my space, really were my rocks, my sheroes, my guiding lights. And now today, the person I look up to is my daughter. I look at both my children, but specifically as a woman, my daughter. I like want to be her when I grow up. She is just her courage and her spirit. She had a tough time with COVID because she was laid off for a while. I just watched her just continue to move through that with such tenacity and rigor and fearlessness. Fighting me sometimes because I was trying to, be the mom, but I've learned, she is my shero for sure.
And then finally, personal habits. People want to know what is personal habits that have driven this kind of success and this kind of drive. Yeah.
So on a personal note, I'm not good at self-care. That's another reason why I could tell that it's time for me to pass the time. I need to take care of myself. I'm a giver. I'm a nurturer. So, however, that being said, I'm an avid reader, and my son, who is also my hero, is a journalist, and he's always recommending a book to me, and always challenging me. I've created a monster because I love to play Scrabble, and now he beats me mercilessly. I'm talking 200 to 70. He beats me mercilessly. But I find tremendous relaxation, and at least once a week he's recommended something for me to read. And I find deep relaxation in that because some of it's brainless reading, that I choose myself. But really, I like to learn. That's for me. That is just really that personal growth. It may sound weird, and I am a geek. I am an engineer, so our brains are wired a certain way, and I love history. I'm super frustrated about this whole critical race theory thing. Why we would not want our children to know our history and to learn from it so that we do not repeat it. So I've done a lot of reading around that to try and understand. You always try to understand where people come from so that I can make a better decision. But that reading is really relaxing for me. And one thing I know that I'm doing in the next chapter, I love to travel. I married a military man, and that gave me the bug it takes to travel. And I think Americans lose so much when we don't travel outside of the United States. We are not the US of the world.
No.
And you realize that we are more alike than we are different.
No,
And
absolutely.
you don't really get that until you travel outside of the US.
Any places you're
My favorite is Prague. I love that city. And I've never been to Tuscany.
Oh, I love Tuscany.
Okay, see.
Next year.
Next year. So after I retire, I'm gonna do that. On my bucket list, I did a river cruise last year, the Seine River in Europe. And I would really like to do a river cruise on the Nile.
Yeah.
So that's on my bucket list. And I think that's gonna be my gift to me. And I'm going to buy a bull mastiff cane corso. I'm a big dog lover.
Oh.
So it's my gift.
Well, yeah. So we're gonna.
He's in charge of us.
Yeah, no, we're gonna have our students are gonna close this out. But I want to say, Dr. Pierce Burnette, you've been really one of my real idols here, and really leadership mentors. Both me and Dr. Pierce Burnette have used this phrase a lot in Austin the last 7 years. The term "the beloved community," whose origin story is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I've seen Dr. Pierce Burnette use it. She's seen me use it. And I think what's so incredible when Dr. Pierce Burnette uses it is the fact that this idea of the beloved community is this community that is free of racial injustice, economic injustice, gender injustice, is pro-human rights, but is not just aspirational. It's this idea that we can build a beloved community right here in the city of Austin and nationally and globally, right? And I was always so filled with admiration and encouraged by the fact that there was a leader saying this publicly, you know, and who believed it as well. Because I've seen you say it where people are like, well, what is she talking about? I've said it, and when I've seen the same, including, and it goes across left-right spectrums, right? So it could be people on, you know, whatever their politics, right? Where they're like, what are you peddling, right? But when you grow up in a faith community, you really believe it. And certainly it's something we aspire to, but it's something we also believe too. So I want to thank you for that, for somebody who injected that into leadership paradigms here in Austin.
Well, mutual admiration, I deeply appreciate that. And I do believe that in my soul. We rarely get to see the fruit from the trees, from the seeds that you plant. And I'm from people who, there's a Mexican proverb that says they tried to bury us, they didn't know that we were seeds. These seeds are going to build that beloved community. I believe that in my soul, and I believe each and every one of us is responsible. Not just those people over there. It's not happening to those people around here. It's happening to all of us, and we're all responsible. And the harder we work, the faster we get.
Now you're gonna make me cry. That's great.
So in closing, I want to go ahead and start off by thanking Dr. Pierce Burnette for being here tonight to accept this award and for your dedication to your role in the community. I want to thank the audience for coming out tonight. A quick reminder that we have another event tomorrow, Strengthening Democracy Through Civil Discourse. It'll be at 5:15 here in the lecture hall. But for now, I would like all of y'all to join us in the lobby for a reception and a champagne toast in Dr. Pierce Burnette's honor.
That's why.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.